Saturday, a morning shower or two, 27. Partly cloudy for Sunday, 29. Then staying fine for next Monday and Tuesday with temps of 29 and 30. More news as it happens on 5AA.
Call 5AA now to Talk Adelaide. 8223 0000. This is Peter Godfrey.
And it's 5 minutes past 5 now, Thursday morning. Being a warm one still. Temperature at the moment has dropped a little bit, 26 degrees. Still being tempted by the rain that's showing on the Weather Bureau's radar. Yeah, getting bits of it. Errol's just rung to say that it's a bit damp around semaphores, so we are getting bits and pieces. Let's hope it keeps on coming with 4 to 10 mils forecast for today by the Bureau. But let's head across the ditch and take a look at news from New Zealand. Selwyn Manning from livenews.co.nz joins us now. Selwyn, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Peter.
How was your long weekend last week? You had a public holiday, was it last week for you?
Yeah, it was. Thursday was Waitangi Day. No, it was very good. Excellent time. Bit of a break at the beginning of the year.
Yes, very nice, very nice. Well, we got an interesting one to talk about this morning. Anger, your side of the ditch to start with, about New Zealand products and goods, being banned, are they, from Coles and Woolworths stores here?
Yeah, I'll lead into this. It certainly has been anger brewing on this side of the ditch, particularly in the last 2 weeks, Peter. And it is about that. The New Zealand products and brands being removed and banned from Australian supermarkets, but I'm talking specifically about those supermarkets owned by Coles and Woolworths chains in Australia. Now, the Kiwi-made grown products, they've been excluded in favour of the competitiveness of the Buy Australian-made goods marketing campaign. So those Kiwi products obviously don't come under that. Now, last week, the New Zealand Prime Minister, John Key, was under a lot of pressure back here to raise the issue during his meeting with Tony Abbott, which took place up in Sydney late last week and into the early weekend. Now, that pressure on John Key intensified, demanding Key basically lay down the law and insist that New Zealand goods be stocked in the supermarkets without prejudice. But both John Key and Tony Abbott exited those meetings saying that they were basically loathed to permit politics to interfere with what they said was business and a business move by the supermarket giants. But they did John Key said that if both if people had a concern relating to those goods, then they could find recourse through legal means, perhaps by citing aspects of the closer economic relations or the CER agreement that's been in place for decades now, and that they could take that through the courts or the Australian Commerce Commission. But yesterday, Peter, it ratcheted up over here in New Zealand again, almost a fever pitch. In the New Zealand Parliament, a senior Labour MP, Shane Jones, he said under privilege that Countdown supermarket managers here in New Zealand had called in suppliers to a special meeting or special meetings where they apparently were told, according to Shane Jones, they were told that the supermarket chains required compensation for stock that had failed to sell well in 2013. And if they did not come through with paying cash back to the supermarket chain, then their products and their brands, if you like, would be banned from sale here in New Zealand too. Now, I've got to say at this stage, Countdown Supermarkets here in New Zealand is owned by Progressive Enterprises, which is owned by Woolworths chain.
Right, yep.
And a spokesperson, got to make it clear, for the supermarket chain denied that such demands had been made. That didn't stop Shane Jones standing there in Parliament, and this might rile up some of the your listeners, Peter, and Shane Jones, the MP here. He referred to this, he insists as a business practice that is taking place, as the dingo culture. Ooh. So that'll give you an indication of just how frustrated some of the business people and in train some of the politicians have become over this side of the ditch, Peter. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I mean, there's certainly been lots of discussions here on the two major supermarket chains here, Woolworths and Coles, and reported pressure they applied to suppliers here, dairy farmers and the like, wanting deals that are certainly more favourable for the supermarket than for the than for the farmers themselves. So but I guess the other side of it, how it will be taken here about whether Australians will be happy for the New Zealand goods as well. One thing, I don't know if it's been factually reviewed here or whether it's more anecdotal, but concerns had been raised here of goods from New Zealand coming in that weren't necessarily New Zealand products, stuff that New Zealand had imported from China, repackaged as New Zealand products and then shipped off to us. Does that something that you hear over there?
I guess there's all sorts of things. What we've found too is like you go to buy what you think was like a beer from Germany or Belgium or Czech Republic or something, and you see that it's all been bottled here in New Zealand or whatever. And so it's the reverse of what you're saying there. All of these kind of things are obviously going to damage the New Zealand brand, aren't they? Over here in New Zealand, primarily what the concerns are is the produce, and in particular, so the short shelf life type of goods that are being sent across to Australia. And it's one of New Zealand's biggest markets. I think China in the pecking order is the biggest, of course. I think it is for most of the Asia-Pacific region nowadays. But certainly Australia is right there, and that closer economic relations issue, that means that it's a reciprocal kind of agreement where Australian products here got basically an open kind of avenue to be on New Zealand shelves, and likewise with New Zealand. Obviously, Australia is a bigger market, so some would say, New Zealand's got it in spades and a better deal there. But it's yet to be tested, put it this way, that whether or not the supermarket practice in Australia under by Australian made kind of marketing campaign can exclude countries like New Zealand's products from having an open go on these shelves. If that practice continued to increase and spread, for example, is it having an impact on United States product that under Australia's free trade agreement with Australia? Does it affect that? And if so, where does it lead to and where does it end? I mean, over on this side in New Zealand, there's always been this belief, in the Anzac mates type of thing and things like that, and there's a good rivalry, obviously, that gets popped across the Tasman from time to time, most often. But at the same time, there seems to be a bit of a rubbing of the chin and thinking, what on earth's going on here? And what should the New Zealand consumer, if our politicians aren't able to send any messages of significance, what's the consumer going to do? And bearing in mind that most of the banks in New Zealand are owned by Australian interests. There's a couple of Kiwi-owned ones. Is there going to be a shift there? Is there going to be a shift away from people spending at the either Coles or Woolworths chain supermarkets? We understand that sales at Countdown supermarkets, which I was saying before, end up being owned by Woolworths, that those sales have dropped significantly. Some reports are suggesting around 9% overall. So, there is a consumer backlash already. So if this is some sort of marketing war, is that going to cause enough concern for the owners back in Australia where they back off a bit, or is it going to be one where it's insignificant?
Yeah, it remains to be seen. Well, we'll watch that one with interest. On to a, even more explosive issue, Selwyn.
It's a little bit. How's that for a segue?
Great segue, yes. And we're talking of the volcanic type. Tell us.
Yes. Now, the scientists are drilling down into Rangitoto. Now, Rangitoto is an island. It's a volcanic island that sits just around about a kilometre off Auckland City's coast. So right in there in the Hauraki Gulf, if people have got a map handy, and or if they've been to Auckland, they'll know it's this wonderful looking island that kind of pops up just off the coast there, and it's no one lives on it. Of course, it's relatively new. Now, it was believed that Rangitoto had erupted around 700 years ago, but the scientists are looking to test when exactly this island rose from the sea, Peter. And the initial belief is that, 700 years ago, and that it was recorded in Maori history of rising from the sea. And the word Rangitoto kind of means, if you translate it into English, fire from the sea. Now, there are various translations to that, but that kind of imagery is what the name represents. Now, these initial core samples from the drill that's been going down, they're down to about 70 metres below the crust, apparently. And they're starting to suggest that rangitoto had a long history over a long time, like even going back to nearly 2,000 years ago, where it had bursts of volcanic activity. And that is raising the spectre, if you like, of is it just merely sleeping at the moment, or is it dormant, or just not going to erupt in the future at all? So if it is just having a bit of a sleep and it's having it's in its slumber period, well, it's raising all of those concerns with civil defence and certainly the city itself that there could be a volcanic eruption at any time. And of course, with Auckland City's population, it's the biggest city in New Zealand. It's similar population to Adelaide.
Yeah.
Certainly the economic engine of New Zealand have huge impacts should that occur.
Gee, you get more than your fair share of natural disasters, don't you? It was earthquakes and a volcano.
Got to stress it looks pretty sleepy at the moment.
Right,
Rangitoto's just sitting there, and it's a fantastic kind of place to go for a walk on. No one lives on it, like I was saying.
Yeah.
But it also in Auckland sits on top of a volcanic field with around 50 relatively small volcano cones. And like myself, where I live, where we live, is right on the rim of a very ancient old crater. So it's an interesting place in that respect. The other thing in Auckland's favour is, I guess in its favour, is that on this type of volcanic cone, they say it's very rare for a cone to re-erupt. That it's more likely that there would be an eruption on another spot that's flat, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It's not like the mountains in the central plateau of New Zealand, that like Mount Ruapehu and Ngauahoe and Tongariro, which kind of erupt from time to time, most recently last year.
Okay, there we go. Some interesting stuff there. So, how's weather been over there in New Zealand lately? Ours has been pretty wild here. Been watching, what's happening in the UK. New Zealand, okay, weather-wise at the moment.
It's been kind of reasonably pleasant since spoke to you last. There's been intermittent, some days beautiful, fine, picture postcard kind of summer days.
Yeah.
And then this oscillates into a little bit of rain and wind. And we're just going into a cloudy one today, Peter. We're pushing for a high, which is down a bit on yesterday, which is 24 degrees today, I think, is the forecast.
Oh, okay.
So you can see it's like you guys kind of going into the air conditioning.
Yes. Well, we've been through a few. We've had more days of 40 degrees this summer than we've ever had. We broke the record, yeah.
I can confess I've never been in 40 degrees. I was up in Africa for a while reporting, but I don't know if it reached 40. It's a different type of heat. And,
Yeah, 40 is not good. 45's even worse. But we've gotten through. We've got 30 today, so that's all right.
That sounds like it's coming down into the livable.
Yes, it is indeed. We're just hoping for a bit of rain now to deal with a few fires we've had around the place. So
you can have some of ours, Peter, as they say.
Yes, wish we could sort of spread it about evenly across the world would be nice, but not as yet. All right, Selwyn, many thanks for joining us. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and we'll catch up with you again next week.
You too, Peter.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Selwyn Manning in New Zealand. Head to livenews.co.nz for more news from across the ditch. 18 minutes past 5 now.
Leon Biner.
This country is under siege from a Pac-Man that knows no equality. Our free trade agreements were mentioned by the most senior Toyota managers as major factor in their decision. It is not an economic theory operating to which everybody complies. We are the only ones who play the straight bat. Everybody else is either underarm or ball tampering.
Talking Adelaide with Leon Biner. Weekday mornings from 9 on 1395 5AA.
This morning, over 500,000 Australian school kids are carrying much more than their backpacks to school. These children are weighed down by isolation, exclusion and self-doubt. Financial disadvantage means they lack the basics to fit in and do well at school. Without support, they may never catch up. Give them the skills and support they need to get the future they deserve. Please donate to the Smith family on 1800 024